ストリーミング用テストになります。マイクテストです。マイクテスト、ストリーミング用音声テストです。マイクテストです。
slavery ということは、たまにドイツの場合に使われているけど、日本の場合も常識、それを使うのは常識になっている。ソ連とか中国とかなんか強制労働はいくらでもあったけど、普通の場合、slavery という言葉は使わない。
He's my classmate. Same alma mater, back at Sophia University, International University. She's very well known.
Okay. Okay. I admit.
Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming today. My name is Abby Leonard. I'm the Vice President here at the FCCJ, First Vice President. I am very happy to be joined today by this esteemed panel of guests. This is going to be an open discussion about freedom of press in Japan, about press freedom in Japan. It's not sort of your typical news conference because we want to really have a conversation with all of you who've joined us today, a back and forth, and talk about the issues facing all of us as journalists. This is obviously a very important issue, a very sort of central concern here at the FCCJ, so we thank you all for coming and for taking the time to talk about it. I don't want to get into all of the issues that our panelists are going to talk about today. I want to give them time to do it. So let me just introduce them, and then one by one they're going to give a statement, and then I'm going to open the floor to questions, but also discussion, as I said. So right to my right is Mr. Pio D'Amelia. Sorry for butchering the Italian. He's the East Asia correspondent for Sky TG24. Then we have Mr. Jun Hori, who's CEO of 8-Bit News. And after that, we have, of course, Cedric Alviani, the East Asia Bureau Director of Reporters Without Borders. We're very happy to have him here with us today, and he was part of the reason that we're having this event at all. Then we have Yasuo Onuki, former NHK Europe Director General and President of Free Press Association of Japan. And Hiroyuki Ida, the Deputy Editor of the Shukan Kinyobi. So we're going to start today with Cedric Alviani, the East Asia Bureau Chief of Reporters Without Borders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I would like to briefly introduce Reporters Without Borders. This is an association that was created in Paris in 1985, so we will soon be a 35 years old organization. It's totally independent from the French authorities and from any other organization. We are mostly funded by a project that is called 100 Photos for Press Freedom, in which we make a photo album for which very famous photographers give the copyright. And this album has become like a bestseller in Europe. We, of course, also have private donations and sometimes some government-related programs, but I insist that RSF is a totally independent association. We defend press freedom, freedom of information, because it is absolutely necessary for democracy. It is absolutely necessary for the rule of law. It is absolutely necessary for the defense of human rights. Without the work that reporters are doing all around the world, there is no way actually to guarantee other freedoms. So we often say that the freedom of the press is the freedom that allows to ensure that other freedoms are being respected. We have different kinds of activities, including assistance, like emergency assistance. We provide bulletproof vests and helmets to journalists going to war zones. We have negotiated an insurance that covers them when they go to places where insurances wouldn't want to cover. We have an observatory position at the UN, UNESCO, Council of Europe, and French-speaking organization Francophonie, where we advocate to improve the situation of press freedom. We, of course, report a lot of news on press freedom, and we do campaigns. You might have seen some of the RSF campaigns that are quite provocative, that try to engage the audience all around the world on the importance of press freedom. You see that map, that is our most important advocacy tool, the World Press Freedom Index. Every year, RSF assesses the situation of the press freedom in 180 territories all around the world. This is not a scientific study at all. It is our personal opinion on the level of press freedom in each of these places. When I say press freedom, I don't only talk about physical security of journalists. I don't only talk about how many journalists are being killed or jailed. We also talk about how many journalists have to censor themselves, how many media cannot fully do their fulfill their role as a counterpower in the country. So that's somehow one reason that leads us to give a ranking that is relatively low to Japan, and I know that we sometimes have been criticized for that, but we somehow assume the ranking we give. I'm here because I want to know better of the situation of Japan, so I'm not going to tell you in detail the reasons that bring us to do that ranking, but the purpose of this map, the purpose of this ranking is to engage the governments, to engage the civil society and try to work together and improve the situation. So I would say that we hope that we can bring a certain level of pressure on the authorities all around the world to improve the situation of press freedom.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Hiroyuki Ida, the deputy editor of the Shukan Kinyobi.
Thank you very much. 日本語で話させていただくことをお許しください。
So my name is Ida. Thank you very much for having me today. I would like to speak in Japanese with consecutive English translation.
週刊金曜日は今年で創刊25周年を迎えました。反ファシズムのフランスの人民戦線のバンドルディというところから雑誌名を取っています。
So our title is 週刊金曜日, which is a weekly Friday, and it comes from the anti-fascism in the French government, where the Barnoldi has named such a thing, and we have taken that name from that and named ourselves 週刊金曜日 Weekly Friday.
戦前の治安維持法の下で京都で発刊されました土曜日という週刊新聞の伝統も受け継いでおります。
So it actually stems also from the pre-war period where there was a magazine called in Kyoto called Doyobi, which is Saturday, and then we take that history from that as well.
25年前、本田勝一、筑紫哲也と著名なジャーナリスト、哲学者、作家を編集員として創刊しました。広告収入に依存しないということで、自由な雑誌を、タブーのなき、報道というものを目指している週刊誌です。
So it started 25 years ago with notable journalists of Katsuichi Honda, Tetsuya Chikushi, and also philosophers as well. And we started by making sure that we maintain advertising free, not reliant on advertising, so that we can maintain our position of a completely free journalism and a taboo-free journalism.
日本の報道の自由度ランキングが、急速に下がっている、これはですね、政府の巧みな仕掛けがあると思います。
And given that the ranking of the freedom of press in Japan has dropped down dramatically over the years, is a warning, we believe, that it is the conniving ways of the current administration of Japan.
法律的にはこの間、個人情報保護法、特定秘密保護法、共謀罪と報道を大きく縛る、危険性が高い法律が次々と成立してきました。
So during this administration, we had many laws that have been passed with much retaliation, with the personal protection law, as well as the specially designated Secrets Act, as well as
共謀罪。
violent act law, conspiracy law, I apologize, have been passed over this administration's reign.
また経済的にはインターネットの普及による、新聞、雑誌等の大幅な部数増があります。それに加えて、消費税を上げるというときに新聞は軽減税率、消費税を、新聞にはアップを適用しないということを、条件に、なんとなく政府に逆らいにくいというか、そういう雰囲気が作られてきました。
So with the prevalence of the internet and online media, there has been a drop in the readership of newspapers and magazines. But given when the administration decided to introduce the hike in the consumption tax, they've decided to exempt these media from actually being subject to this consumption tax rise. This again is a sort of a way for the administration to sort of make it difficult for the media to go against the administration.
今後ですね、一番私が心配しているのが2020年の東京オリンピックに向けた動きです。これに反対とか批判的な報道をするのが非常に愛国的でないという攻撃を受ける、つまり同調圧力が働くことで日本の記者、ジャーナリズムがますます萎縮してしまうのではないかということを危惧しています。
One of my greatest concerns at this moment is our I guess the media coverage towards the 2020 Olympics. And what that means is because of the current state of the press and whatnot, we believe that it is difficult for the press to cover and also report something that is anti or maybe critical of the situation, which will be construed as anti-patriotic. And that would actually infringe or constrain the press to actually report as is.
とりあえずこんなところです。ありがとうございます。Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our third speaker now is Mr. Jun Hori, journalist and CEO of 8-Bit News and a former NHK announcer.
はい、皆さんよろしくお願いします。今インターネットの中継で累計で6万6千人の方がニコニコでご覧になっていただいていて、日本のユーザーの方が多いと思いますので、僕からは日本語で説明をさせていただきます。僕は5年前までそうですか。ベンジャミンさんありがとうございます。
So thank you very much. My name is Hori, and I believe there are 66,000 viewers on the other side watching us through the internet, and there are many of them are Japanese viewers, so allow me to speak in Japanese.
僕は5年前に NHK を辞めました。それまでは12年間、ニュースキャスター、ニュースリポーターとして、報道番組に関わっていました。僕が関わってきた番組は新番組ばかりです。ニュースウォッチ9という番組、夜の9時の報道番組の立ち上げ、そして経済ニュースのビズスポという番組の立ち上げ、そして NHK で新しく始めた日本のジレンマという討論番組の立ち上げに関わっています。
So 5 years ago, I've left NHK, but until then, for 12 years, I was at NHK as a newscaster, news reporter. And during that time, I was involved in many of the news coverages. For example, the new programs, particularly with the News Watch 9, and also the launch of the Bid Sports program, and also a debate program called NHK
ジレンマ。
Nippon's Dilemma.
特に東日本大震災や原発の事故があってからは非常に政治的なテーマとニュースの内容をすり合わせていかなくてはいけないような局面も出てきて、僕にとっては随分不自由だなと感じることが増えました。
And since the East Japan earthquake and also the nuclear incidents that followed, it became more difficult as a journalist to make sure that what we cover in the news has to sort of be in line with the political themes and agendas during that time.
特に原子力の政策に関しては、僕が最後経済ニュースの担当だったということもあって、経済部のスタンスとやはり現場の被災者の取材を続けてきた僕の立場では大きく違っていました。
Particularly, this was true for the nuclear policy that was part of the administration, because during that time I was part of the economics department and covering the economics news. And our position as our department within NHK was different from that of the victims of these nuclear incidents.
でそのコミュニケーションを取りながら議論を戦わせながら番組をしていたんですが、あまりにも不自由だと感じることが多かったので、僕は自分の SNS のアカウントも立ち上げて、そして NPO のニュースメディアも NHK 職員として、プライベートで立ち上げて運営するようになりました。
But it became more and more constricting for us to really tell the news as what it was. I decided to actually start an SNS account on my own and start to talk about what I feel is important to be reported as a news. Also, I launched an NPO while I was at NHK and really covered the news that was important for me.
ただ組織の人間にとって自由に発言をするというのは管理をする側にとってみると非常に面倒くさい存在だったと思います。
But belonging to an organization as such, I think the organization felt that I was sort of a pain. In other words, I was looked upon as somebody who was sort of the black sheep of the group.
政治的な圧力があったかどうかは分かりません。社内の忖度だったかもしれません。ただ僕自身はなかなか社内で自由に発言を報道でしていく機会が制限されていきましたので、思い切って外の世界に飛び出したということです。
There wasn't an official pressure per se, but it might have been sort of like the common, I guess, consensus that they came to. But it became more and more that I find it difficult for me to express my opinions, express my position in a way that I saw fit. Hence the reason for me to become independent.
今僕自身は2つのニュースサイトを運営しています。一つは、NPO で運営しているニュースメディアで、これは、市民メディアです。Citizen journalism.
So I am running two sites at the moment on the media. One is an NPO news site. It's a citizen journalism.
NPO では市民記者のトレーニングも日々行っています。
We also do a daily training of these citizen journalists.
もう一つは NPO や NGO の活動を専門に取材して発信するメディアです。
Another of those sites is a site dedicated to covering the activities of the NPOs and NGOs.
なぜそこに注視したか、注目したか、その NGO は世界の人道支援の現場を担っています。例えばガザ、そして朝鮮民主主義人民共和国などでも NGO は、日本の NGO は人道支援も行っています。
And the reason why I decided to cover these NPO and NGOs is because they are dedicated to focusing on the human rights issue. These are organizations that actively work in Gaza or North Korea, and they're involved in making sure that the human rights issues.
そうした活動現場は常に政府の方針とも対峙しながら人道支援を続けている、まさに民主主義の根幹をなす現場です。ただこれをなかなかテレビの報道番組で取り上げようとするとセンシティブだと言って躊躇する人も多いでしょう。
They are really at the forefront of going against some of the policies of the current administration of the different countries, and they are really fighting those battles. But having said that, it is difficult to cover what they're actually doing on the normal media, traditional TV media.
そういう現場を伝えるために私自身もそれらの海外の現場にも赴き、NGO チームとともに現状を伝えるという活動を続けてきました。
That's why I believe it is important for me to actually physically fly out to these places so that I can be at the forefront of what the NGOs are doing and give a fair coverage.
そのメディアで最後の皆さんにお伝えするのは、今お伝えしているのはシリアの国内にとどまっている、市民記者や訓練を受けたジャーナリストたちとの連携です。
And one of the activities from that is related to Syria and really training to making sure that those civil journalists are able to act accordingly.
安田純平さんが無事に帰ってきてくれました。本当に嬉しかったです。ところが日本国内のテレビメディアで取り上げている話題は自己責任論ばかりで、肝心のシリアに関しての人道支援の話はほとんど報道していません。
It was amazing, and it was such a relief that Junpei Yasuda safely came back to Japan and Japanese soil. But unfortunately, during that time, the TV media coverage did not cover the importance of the human rights issues and activities that was engaged by these NGOs and POs. But it was about criticizing Junpei Yasuda of not taking the responsibility as a journalist.
しかも安田純平さんが拘束されていたシリアのイドリブ県は世界最大の人道危機と直面している地域です。それにしても日本のメディアは沈黙している。これを変えたい。そうしたことから取材を継続して発信を続けています。
Area that Mr. Yasuda's working, it was literally I guess the pinnacle of where there was a lot of violation of human rights, and it was important that this part had to be covered, but unfortunately it was not.
しかしパートナーでもある現地のジャーナリストでありアクティビストライド・ファーリエさんは殺害されました。先々週のことです。
And unfortunately, his partner, Raid Salin, who was a journalist and an activist, was assassinated just the other day.
しかしライド・ファーリエさんについてのストーリーを発信している日本国内のメディアはほとんどありません。ガーディアンや BBC などは伝えていました。
While the Guardian and the BBCs were actually running the coverage of this assassination of this journalist, none were covering of the assassination of Mr. Raid Salin.
インターネットでおそらくライド・ファーリエと検索していただければ僕らの記事が出てくるはずです。
So if you do a Google search of his name, you'll probably run into our article.
自由や民主主義や人権というものに対して意識の低い、これが今の日本のメディアの状況じゃないかということに一番危機感を覚え、今日皆さんの活動に共感してここに来ました。変わればいいと思っています。
This is why I am here today, because I feel that we are at a critical state in Japan, that this freedom of press is being violated, because such democracy is not being practiced in the press, and also that it's bounding us, our journalists, to report as is.
以上です。ありがとうございました。
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was really interesting to hear the perspective, both sort of inside NHK, the mainstream media, and outside. So thank you. So along the same lines, we have our next speaker, Yasuo Onuki, who is the former NHK Europe Director General and now the president of the Free Press Association of Japan.
私はその批判を受けた NHK にたまたま、ヨーロッパのオペレーションの中心を務めたものなんですけどちょっと私の現場に沿った経験を日本の人たちでは多分聞いたことない視点からちょっと述べてみたいと思います。それでおそらく逆にアメリカの記者たちとかあるいはヨーロッパの記者たちから見ると当たり前ということ、そういうことがいくつか私がアメリカヨーロッパ取材時代に体験したということから述べていきたいと思います。その80年代から90年代にかけて、アメリカに駐在していた時ですね、広く何度も言われましたのはですね、日本は世界で唯一経済に成功した社会主義国家だったんです。つまり官僚、党官僚と官僚ですね。それでね、いろいろ話しますとね、日本はね、日本の常識は世界の非常識だという、いろいろなこと言われました。それで私がごめんなさいね。はい。
So, thank you. I'm following Hori-san, and I actually was part of the NHK organization, and I was a director general of that European division. And instead of taking my position as an NHK director general, I'd like to give you my insight into what I found out during my years of being appointed in the posts in the U.S. and Europe. And it was during the 80s and 90s, this is what I've experienced. And during that time, we were told oftentimes that Japan was the only country that was a socialist country that was successful economically, achieved the success, economic success as a socialist country. And
「それで例えばですね、当時アメリカ商工会議所の日本の回答をしていたですね、日本彼はちょっと一人と親しくなりまして、よく情報交換とか勉強会をしていたんです。その中にね、チャルマーズ・ジョンソンといういわゆる日本のメディアからレビジョニストとレッテルを貼られた人がおりました。 南カリフォルニア大学の教授ですけど、チャーマー・ジョンソン。日本のメディアね。
So this was a time where I had many exchanges, and one of that was with the head of the Chamber of Commerce in the U.S. And we used to regularly sit down for information exchange and roundtables. And one of the professors at the University of Southern California, Chandler Johnson, told us that the Japanese journalist was we were sort of a revisionist.
で、私が初対面で名を名乗ったところです。もう怒りの形相でですね、お前が日本のその政府の宣伝機関の NHK のエージェントかって言うんですよね。これに私も驚きましてね。
It was the first time that I met this gentleman, and even it was our first encounter, he had this really angry, upset expression in his face. So you're the one who's being the PR for that Japanese government.
それで非常に私彼に関心を持ちまして、以来非常に交流をして親しくなった仲なんです。お亡くなりになりましたけどね。で、彼が常々言ってたのは、彼は沖縄に海兵隊員として4年駐在していたんですね。その間にいかにね、沖縄の人が無視されてるかと、それを日本のメディアがいかに無視してるかと、でほとんど政府の言いなりになってるっていうこと、その当時からそれを目の当たりにして怒りを覚えたと。一体日本のメディアはどこを動いてるんだと。これが私が最初にアメリカで非常に痛感した一言です。
So despite our colorful exchange at the initial stage, we became really good friends, and we started to exchange opinions and ideas and information. And he told me of his time there where he was stationed in Okinawa, covering the situation at the Okinawa base in Japan. And he was so angry that the people of Okinawa were completely ignored by the Japanese government and the Japanese media. And he was very frustrated that a fair coverage was not given to the people of Okinawa.
今日はちょっとこれからの議論のためにもう一つヨーロッパでの一番心に残っている体験をお話ししますとね、先ほど堀さんが安田純平さんのことをお話ししましたけど、その2002年から4年にかけてのイラク戦争でですね、やはり当時イラクの武装勢力に3人の日本人のボランティアの人たちが拘束された事件がありました。
So that was my experience in the U.S. If I may just cover my experience in Europe. And as Hori-san has mentioned about Mr. Junpei Yasuda, the journalist that was safely covered, let me just go back in 2002 to 2004 during the Iraqi war. And during that time, 3 Japanese volunteers were actually captured.
この時に堀さんも指摘した自己責任論というものを言い出したんですね。それも総理大臣、それから国民の保護をレゾンレートルの一つとしている外務省の次官までが口を揃えて言って3人を非難したんですね。
And during that time, the way that this incident was covered was all about the self-responsibility of those volunteers. They were being not responsible to be in that position, and it was the voice, the tonality of the Prime Minister, as well as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and who was supposed to be the representative for us to be in that international community.
でその時は私はロンドンにいて、ロンドンとヨルダンのアンマンを行ったり来たりして、イラク戦争のいろいろな手伝いをしていたんですけど、イラク戦争の取材のですね、その時に日本のマスコミは自衛隊の駐屯地にサマーに行って駐屯地引き上げた時はそのまま帰ってしまったんですが、私はヨーロッパの記者にはとにかく他のメディアがきちんといるのだからいろいろやるはずで、安全は一番自分たち知っているのだから残ってくれということでバグダッドに残ってもらいましたけど、この時にですね、ドイツのフォーカスという記者からだと思うんです。一体日本のメディアはどちらを向いてるんだと、そういうことを言われました。それ何が起きたんだということで見て初めて3人のこのボランティアの、高藤直さんたちですけどね、解放された時の日本での反応でした。でマスコミ、いわゆるマスコミですね、これが政府の責任でなくて、なんと3人のボランティアの責任を問うたんですね。家族までも責めてました。それが分かって本当に私も驚きました。こんな国なのかということは、ヨーロッパではそういうことはなくてですね、それからちょうどたまたまですね、TBS の当時のワシントン支局長が 順番で私も分かるんですが、パウエル国務長官のインタビューがあったんですね。その時に、ごめんなさいね。
So during that time, actually, I did travel to Myanmar and also cover the Iraqi war at the moment during that time. And because of the Japan Defense Army's position, we actually backed out of going and making these travels. And this was unheard of for probably the European journalism. Journalists are there to provide the safety, to make sure that the truth be told of what's going on, and that is to protect also the armies and the defense forces of the country. And it was one of those shocking moments that happened. And when the 3 volunteers were captivated and when they were liberated, the mass media's coverage of that it wasn't the responsibility of the government, but it was a responsibility of that volunteer and their families. They were the ones to be blamed. And all of that has sparked an incredible anger from one of the German journalists, Focus, saying that, what is the Japanese media doing? Why are they looking at it? Why are they speaking just for the government? And it was for me, because I was stationed in Europe at the time, I was quite shocked to find, so this is what Japan has come down to. This is what it is.
そういうことで自己責任論というのがどちらに向けられているかという一番弱い立場の人に向けられているんです。それでたまたまこの時ですね、CNN がリポートでアメリカ人の石油技術者がですね、自分の金儲けのためにイラクに入りまして、そこでやはり武装勢力に拘束されたんですけど、この時にこの人はボランティア慈善のための活動じゃないんですけど、自分の金儲けのために行ったわけですけど、その人をみんなで救おうというキャンペーンをやってるんですね。この、その戦争をやってる国のもちろん国民ですけど、とにかくその国民をみんな救おうというメディアがね、それはきちんとそういう目を持っていました。で日本との大違いでした。日米同盟と言いながら全くね向いてる方向が逆なんですよ、人々に対して。それはもう象徴的な出来事でした。また先ほどの話に戻りますと、3人のボランティアに対してたまたまパウル国務長官のインタビューを受けて、非常に立派な人たちだと、イラクの子どもたちとかより良い善のために尽くしている素晴らしい人たちだと称賛して初めて日本のメディアのバッシングが終わったという情けない状態でした。
So this really incident told me that the Japanese media exists not to protect the weak, but to protect the power that's in place. And during that time also, there was an incident in the U.S. as well, and it was about a coverage that I saw on CNN. It was about this oil engineer who actually flew to Iraq during the wartime, during when the U.S. and Iraq was in war, and he was not a volunteer, but when he traveled, he was captured. But when he was captured, the media was all about, let's save this person, let's save him. And the media was about making sure that we can bring him home. And the focus was about really protecting the people of the country. And this was a startling and also a symbolic 2 incidents that told me, despite having this U.S.-Japan treaty, these 2 countries, the media, are looking at a completely different directions. And just going back to the 3 volunteers, while the Japanese media were bashing and criticizing these volunteers for being captivated and causing a lot of trouble, and it was actually the Minister Powell who actually praised these volunteers for their courage and their brave work that they have done. And with that interview comment, that's when the bashing of these volunteers in the Japanese media stopped. It was quite embarrassing.
こういう傾向がますます今強まっているという感じを抱いています。結局日本のメディアの、特に記者クラブがやはり一番の要因かもしれませんけど、で先ほど最初に井田さんが指摘したように、日本のメディアが大きなイベントの主催者となっているところにも原因があるんですけど、ほとんどその報道の自由という、自由というインディペンデントな独自の視点できちんと報道するという、もちろん人権とかそういう普遍的な価値観に基づいてですね、それはなくなっていると、余計難しくなっているということを思い浮かべましたのはですね、今日本のマスコミがほとんど報じていない伊藤詩織さんの、私は強姦事件だと思ってるんですけど、それを差し止めた安倍政権に中枢にいる警察官によって、幹部警察官によって差し止められた捜査が中止された事件、これがほとんど誰も報道されてない、全く事件がないかのような感じです。それで 逆に、まあ、皆さんご存知のようにニューヨーク・タイムズも BBC もあるいはドイツのメディアもフランスのメディアもきちんと取り上げてます。大問題です。それを全く報道してない、沈黙、無視してます。でたまたま去年の自由報道協会の賞を伊藤詩織さんにどうしても非常に力のある一冊、彼女の困難を克服して出した一冊の書が非常に強く訴えるものがありましたので、それを、伊藤さんに賞を差し上げたわけなんですけど、非常に伊藤さん初めてだって言ってました。それで今日本非常に居づらいっていうことを言ってました。こういう人が居づらいっていう国っていうのは一体どうなるのかと、そういうことを考えてね、それでやはり日本はその報道の自由というのはもうほとんどインスティテューショナライズ、組織化されて抹消されようとしていると、そういう危機感を覚えております。以上です。
So I am concerned that such incidents is growing even more. And with the Japanese media, particularly with the Kisha Club, I think is the one to blame for. And I believe Ida-san has mentioned as well, this big event that's coming up in 2020 is the sponsors are the media. And that's why the independence of the media is something that we have to keep an eye on, because that is something that's not really being practiced at the moment. And particularly with something that's universal as human rights issues, etc., I think there is a lot of censorship and violation that's going on. And I'd like to point out the incident with Miss Shiori Ito. And that incident was covered, but unfortunately it was silenced immediately by the administration and the Central Police because it was something that was not, they thought was seen fit. And it's almost like because the media has become completely silent, that incident did not exist. And that's how this the media works at the moment. That incident was actually covered in New York, France, Germany, and BBC, but not in our country, Japan. And it was quite unfortunate. And last year in 2017, our Freedom of Press Association has given an award to Ms. Shiori Ito for speaking up. And she said it was the first time that such recognition was given to me. And she herself told us that this country is a very difficult place to live. And that really is an alarming comment that I think we should really take on board, that such person is finding it difficult to live in Japan.
Thank you very much. That was really interesting. So now we've heard from Japanese journalists, and we're going to turn now to a longtime foreign correspondent in Japan, Mr. Pio D'Amelia, who's the East Asia correspondent for Sky TG24.
Thank you. When Onuki-san reminded the issue of the 4 hostages, I recollect this very well because at that time also in Italy we had 2 hostages. And I remember we brought Takato Naoho, one of the Japanese hostages, back to Italy to do a press tour. And she was really, really envious of the fact that our 2 hostages were given a very warm welcome by the government and by the press, and they became kind of heroes instead of Murahachibu, like it happened here in Japan. Anyway, my name is Pio D'Amelia, and yes, I have been around a long time, almost 40 years, and that is why I'm happy to share some experiences that I have acquired on the field. First, as a freelancer for many years for a very small and combative newspaper in Manifesto, and then more recently for a so-called mainstream big TV corporation. I believe that we should go into details. Since we're talking about freedom of the press, we're talking about the fact that Japan has been dropped from the, I believe, 27 or 28th rank until 67 now, which is something that happened even to my country. I mean, even Italy now is, I think, 46 or 47. Certainly it's not like Switzerland or Sweden. So people, when they read this, they say, wow, I mean, how can that be? In Japan and in Italy, they don't kill journalists. They don't torture them. They don't arrest them. They may be threatened sometimes, but why should be so long? Well, you don't have to kill, arrest, or torture journalists to keep them subdued. There are many others and more efficient ways of subduing the power of the press and the courage of the journalist. I'm sure that we have time later on to analyze some of those that happens in Japan and in other countries like mine. But first, I would like to mention that as journalists, we should be a little bit self-criticizing ourselves. It is not proper, especially in countries where violence is not, boryoku is not put on by the governments. We should think about ourselves. How do we approach news gathering, and how do we actually exercise our duty and right to report? As many of us, I should hope everybody knows, in Japan it's not very easy to collect informations. There are many technical, logistical, and so-called cultural obstacles. We have the Kisha Kaiken, the press conference. We have the closed shop, like the Kisha Club, the press clubs. I believe that there are still more than 800 around. Can you imagine 800 Kisha Club? And I'm not talking about the foreign ministry or nuclear plants or police departments. I'm talking even about the sumo association. I'm talking about small association around the country where basically you cannot enter and report if you are not officially a member of this Kisha Club. I've been personally involved when I was in the board of the FCCJ in the 90s in direct consultations with first Nihon Shimbun Kyokai, Association of Publishers, and then with some Japanese authorities, including the Gaimsho. But after a few months of negotiation, we all realized that it was a meaningless fight. Meaningless fight because in this country, there is not a war from the government to the foreign journalist, at least not an open one. There is more a war between local journalists and us. And this is, let me be very blunt about this, very frank, it's rather disgusting. Journalists should be united in their job. While here sometimes the journalists themselves, at least those of the mainstream media, are fighting the battle to keep the closed shop. I believe 25 years have passed now from when, I think David was his name, Blatz or something, David Butts, yes? Yes, he was the bureau chief of Bloomberg, I think. I was already around here. It was 1993 or 4, something like that. And he made news because after waiting so many months for having access to the Kabutocho Kisha Club, the stock exchange, he decided to do it, I would say, the American way. Or he started to punch at the door, and he entered the room to the surprise of all officials, but especially of the colleagues of the Nikkei, of the NHK, of the Sankei. They were the one who did not want him to have a desk and a phone booth and to receive at the same time the releases in a field that is not my field, but I'm sure you understand that in that field, in that sector, to have the news at the right moment, exactly like all the others, is very important. It's business. It's not only freedom of information. I myself sometimes forced in. I don't want to recount all these personal adventures, but I did, and I succeeded too. Once you insist and you really want the story and you show up your press card, by the way, it's a suggestion to all colleagues. Don't mind too much with the game show press card. Get this one. This is much more important. Of course, you can't get this if you are not registered with the game show, but once you have this, things are much easier. This is the kokkai to enter the parliament. But actually, this works much more than the foreign ministry press card. Even if you go to the Koban in Okayama. Am I right? It's a matter of insisting, of behaving and knowing, having a consciousness of your rights and of your duties. Once we have that, in a in a era where we can access the media directly, this press conference is broadcasted, I'm seeing here, live by us and by Nico Nico, and so. What hampers us journalists to write and do what we are supposed to do? So I would not concentrate only on the responsibilities of the governments, but as an old hand, as an old journalist who has been covering even some delicate issues abroad, I would like to suggest to stimulate young colleagues to be braver, like our friend here, to quit a newspaper if he's not happy about the way things are done, and go on the battlefield. It's not impossible right now. Let's not just cry, oh, they don't let me write. Oh, the editor is very happy, very bad with me. I mean, there are ways to make yourself worth of the professional that you have chosen. I am happy to answer other questions after.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that concludes the speeches from the panel, and now we would love to hear from the audience. So both questions and comments, personal experiences. I'm going to start on this side of the room because it's our regular members and sort of work down. So does anybody have questions? Yes, okay, so please come up to the microphone. Tell us your name, where you're from, and if there's someone specific you'd like to answer your question, let us know.
Okay, my name is Benjamin Fulford. I've been a member here since 1988. I used to be the Asia Pacific Bureau Chief for Forbes magazine. I'm now the editor and publisher of weekly geopolitical news and analysis. Now, I've suffered at least 5 murder attempts in this country, and I have traced it forensically to Richard Armitage and Michael Greenberg, who are the people who give orders to Prime Minister Abe. And if you don't understand this, and you don't understand that the Yamaguchi-gumi subcontracts murders of journalists for these people, you have no idea what's really happening in this country. And I also have had a problem with this press club, and this is why I came here today, is that I've been trying to get them to discuss some of these issues and bring in net journalists, internet journalists like Richard Koshimizu, who have hundreds of thousands of readers, who can tell you some of these truths, instead of having a sort of a kind of a fake map here. I'm sorry, but the English world, 90% of the media is controlled by 6 corporations. It's censored. I tried to have a book published in English by Dandelion Press. The Department of Homeland Security froze their bank accounts to prevent this from happening. So what I'm trying to say here is that if you want to have press freedom, you really have to go right to the heart of the issue, which is that at the very highest level, we have murderers and gangsters terrorizing the big media company owners and the top politicians. And if you don't get to that point, you're not going to get press freedom. So that's just what I wanted to say. I'm sorry to take up your time, but
thank you very much.
We can have another
okay.
questions because that was not the
No,
question.
okay,
right?
thank you for the comment. Yes, Anthony.
Anthony Rowley, Singapore Press, Business Times, etc. I'm certainly not complacent about press freedom, but I gave a talk recently at Meiji Daigaku Gakuin about freedom of speech and freedom of the press. And when I mentioned Japan's very low ranking by Reporters Without Borders, I was asked, why is it so low? And frankly, I couldn't really give them a good answer. I said I thought it had something to do with the Designated Secrets Act, access to information, and so on. But I wonder whether Reporters Without Borders is not being too gloomy, almost crying wolf, if you like. In other words, by giving Japan such a low ranking, when things do get really bad, what are you going to do? You're going to drop it to number 455, you know. Excuse me. I've been in journalism for more than 50 years, and I've worked in numerous Asian countries. I haven't actually been arrested myself. I've had colleagues arrested in my presence. I've been harassed. I've been followed. I've had my phone tapped, and so on. I was chief judge of a journalism competition for a number of years, in which some really horrific stories about developing countries in Asia and the real repression that journalists face there really were really heartbreaking. So. The question basically is really, why do you give Japan this ranking, and is it really wise?
Thank you. That's an excellent question, and I'm sorry it might take me a few minutes to answer fully. Yeah. The first thing, yet I mentioned it very briefly earlier, is that we do not assess only the violence against journalists, but we assess the global atmosphere, the global system that allows journalists or not to do their work of a counterpower. There are some northern countries, I'm sorry I forgot which one, in which a media owner would never engage in any other business ownership. Unfortunately, in France it's not the case, in the US it's not the case, in Japan it's not the case. So there are examples of freedom of media that is much higher simply because they do not have that type of pressure. So, okay. So it's very important to see that that map of the press freedom, that ranking, comes out from a note that we give to each country. We have a criteria like editorial freedom of journalists, like media ownership, like of course the level of violence, like the regulation, the lawsuits against journalists that allows us to give a note. This note is being ponderated with the result of a questionnaire which we send to a certain number of journalists and specialists all around the world. That's mostly in order to make sure we don't make a mistake, but I would say that this map is the result of an editorial decision from RSF on each country. We follow the situation in every country, and we believe we have a proper understanding on how easy or difficult it is for the media to be a counterpower. We sometimes may make mistakes, it happens, which we correct in the next edition. There is also a problem that the world currently is sinking. The press freedom all around the world is going really bad. And because the ranking is from 1 to 180, it's kind of piling down, and we do not know how to do because we might need to downgrade most countries recently. So there are some automatic movements sometimes of countries going up just because some other countries go bad. So of course it is a tool that is made, I would say, of goodwill, but that can be perfected year after year. This is not a finality. We are not scholars. We do not want to make study on press freedom worldwide. We are activists. We want to, at least if we can, contribute to change the situation. So this map is a way for us to engage debates like the one today, engage with the civil society, engage with the governments, and sometimes shame the governments, and this might be efficient. In the case of Japan, Japan is one of the biggest democracies in the world. Japan, if I don't mistake, is the third economic power in the world. Japan is a very important country in Asia, and it should set an example. It should be an example. It should have the freest press in the region. it should have perfect working conditions for journalists. We can expect this from Japan. So it is normal that somehow our ranking on Japan might be harsher than it could be to a country that blatantly, obviously violates press freedom because, yes, they do it. The thing is that we expect Japan, when I hear sometimes Japanese officials or journalists tell me, well, the situation is not so bad, show me. Yeah, I mean, I would be so happy that we make a press conference to announce that the ranking in Japan has been upgraded and that the situation is much better. We did that actually last year in South Korea. In South Korea, the situation was extremely bad, and the past two presidents have been openly fighting with journalists to prevent them from releasing scandals of corruption and that were concerning them. The journalists in Korea and the civil society have struggled so hard that they managed to have them heard. They managed to have the justice impeach the last president, who is now in jail for a very, very serious case of corruption. And the new government in Korea, South Korea, has very actively engaged in solving a whole list of press freedom problems that everybody knew, everybody denounced for years. So it was my true pleasure last year in April to organize a press conference in Seoul and announce that South Korea had gained 20 ranks in the World Press Freedom Ranking, because yes, there is a will from the government to improve the situation. Yes, the journalists have won such the battle, and yes, as Pio mentioned, it's also the responsibility of journalists to fight for their rights, because press freedom somehow dies if you do not take care of it. There's a tendency in politics and business to try and control things. So of course, journalists' counterpower is something you try to reduce. So, I mean, journalists have to fight for this. So we would be very, very happy to upgrade Japan, providing that there is any sign that the authorities take the problem seriously, providing that there have been some improvements. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I would just like to throw that question to some of our journalist colleagues who are up here to ask them more specifically about their experiences. You spoke in your remarks about things like feeling pressure to cover the Tokyo Olympics in a certain way, or the silencing of Shiori Ito. But it would be great to hear specifically how that works inside a news organization. What are the mechanisms the government uses to put pressure on you? I mean, it sounds like you feel some pressure, but how does that work exactly? So could someone, yes.
私の経験から言うとまだ少し古いかもしれません、あるいは続いているかもしれませんけど、例えば政府が一つの政策を出す、あるいは予算を出す、その時に編集局長会議とかですね、記者クラブのメディアのね、あるいは解説論説委員っていうかな、新聞ではっていうの解説委員長の会議などがありましてね、その関係省庁の幹部といろいろ打ち合わせするわけで、次のあれはこういうあれが趣旨だとか、この本はこういうあれが実は中心なんだということを解説するわけですね。それをね、当時の今はどうか分かりませんけど、編集局長や解説委員長、論説委員長とそれを前提として書いていったと。それで教育からするともちろん疑いないで教えられたことを学べという教育が続けられているわけですけど、疑問を持たずにですね、ほとんど疑問を持たずにそれをやると。それでもですね、当時の今と比べますと、当時はじゃあそれに関係する消費者団体やあるいはその影響を受ける人たちの声をテレビでも拾いました。今それがほとんどなくなってるんですね。それからね、報道の自由ということです。
So if I may share my experience, it might be old because it's from my days in NHK, or it might be continuing, I'm not sure. But normally when a government or administration issues or announces a policy or a budget, what happens is we have a discussion with the members of the ministry, with the chief editors of the Kishakurab, and also in the newspaper divisions as well. And we get the explanation from the government as to the intent of the policy, the focus of the budget. And when this is actually put into an article, it is really the basis of what the article is going to be about. This is going to be the fundamental basis of that article. Normally, journalists are educated that we need to doubt what we hear. We need to question what is put in front of us. But unfortunately, that does not happen in the first coverage of the article. But during that time when I was at present in NHK, we would also do an additional coverage to really capture the voices of the consumer bodies or the people who will be affected by the new policies or budget to cover their side of the story as well.
そういうこともあるんですけど、こういわば制度化されて報道の自由がなくても満足するような形になっていると、それが一番の問題じゃないかと思うんですね。極めてコンフォータブルです。だけどもちろんだからメディアのトップを攻撃するようなことはありえないわけですよ。そうそうそうそう。でそういうところが一番の問題であって、それで例えばね、ある新聞なんかの有名なジャーナリストがテレビでね、実は私がね、なんとか総理大臣とよく知り合って飯を食ってるんだってこと堂々と自慢するんですね。これはね、私はアメリカヨーロッパから出るとこれとても恥ずかしくて言えないことなんで、たとえ関係があってもそれは言わないでねということがあるんですけど、非常に正直というか、その価値観が随分変わってる社会だってことはそれを相対的に気づくんですよ。でそれを恥じない、天として恥じない。今でもね、なんか安倍総理がね、盛んにメディアの人間を食事に誘って、それにいそいそとのこのこと出かけてくれるのが多いのがちょっと私も驚いてるんです。当たり前になってるんです。その危険性を我々が自覚できないと、それは本当に危ないと思ってるんですよ。でいつの英語ではビナインっていうかな、陰微な形でずっとこの
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Let's let the translator
thank you.
take a moment.
So this ways of, I guess, reporting is sort of systematized. So the information we get from the members of the ministry, the government, is something that the journalists will naturally report as is, and they were complacent and not really question what that was. And so it was obviously difficult for them to actually criticize the tops of the media. But having said that, there are more other incidents that are quite embarrassing in my view, and I think a lot of our journalist colleagues. Sometimes a famous journalist would be on TV and be boasting about how they were wined and dined by the Abe government or the Prime Minister Abe and their close relationship with the central government or Mr. Abe himself. Such boasting is something that I believe the American or the European journalists will find it quite embarrassing. How can you actually talk about that as your close relationship with the central government where you need to be on the critical side? But the fact that he is not embarrassed about it and to be boasting about it is something that is quite alarming. And Prime Minister Abe also talks about how he wines and dines other media as well. And I think that's, people say that it's sort of a benign way of the government to influence. And I believe that's going on, and it is something that the journalists have to be aware of and to be thinking about how critical and how invasive that is in terms of journalistic freedom.
そういう点で報道の自由のそのランキングでね、なかなかカテゴリーに合わないと思うんですよ。でその中でやはりいろんな要素を加えるとどうしてもね、日本の報道はちょっともう相当おかしくなってるなっていうことが気づくんですけど、この分析をまたなかなかしない。やはり我々よく私NHK 時代によく今でも話してるんですけど、歴史をきちんと遡ってみると、それから世界の中で比較してみると、その中の2つが交差する座標軸で日本はどこにあるかと、この問題はどうなっているかということを見るということを進めているんですが、それと同時に普遍的な価値観というのは、一頃安倍政権がね、法の支配とか民主主義共通の価値観に基づいて言ってますと、全く逆のことをやってることをほとんど報道できない。そこがやはり問題でしてね。でこんなことやってますとね、政府の言うことだけを報道したらこれ決して報道ではなくて単なる宣伝なんですね。ですから自殺行為になるということを自覚してもらいたいなと思ってるんですね。メディアの自殺行為ね。
So again, another point I'd like to make is that the Japanese journalism weak on analysis. And what I always tell my NHK colleagues is that we always have to look back in history, the facts of the history that we have passed, and also look at where we are in terms of the global map as well, and see where Japan is. And we need to be critical, analytical about this. But unfortunately, this does not happen. And at the end of the day, although the administration talks about the universal values, importance of law, and the common values, he does something quite opposite. And we need to be critical as journalists to be covering that, but unfortunately, this does not happen. And unfortunately, at this time, a lot of the journalists are becoming the PR department for the central government.
Thank you. Yes, please.
なぜここまで日本で報道の自由度が低いというランキングが毎回出ていくか、僕はこれはいつも思っているんですが、メディアと、見る人、いわゆる私たち国民は共犯関係にあると思っています。
So why are we so low in our ranking? And I feel this is something that's really quite troubling. But I believe the media and the viewers are accomplices.
例えば先ほど言ったガザやそしてシリア・イドリブ県からは日本に向けて、現地の住民の皆さんが日本語のプラカードなどを持って知ってほしいとか、震災の時には追悼のメッセージを出したりしてくれているんですけども、そういうことを知っている日本人は僕は帰国していろいろ聞いてみますけども、本当にごくわずかです。
So, for example, the situation in Gaza and Syria, because the people on the ground, the civil journalists, want the Japanese people to know about what's going on. They have these Japanese written cards and communicating to the people. But unfortunately, many of the Japanese people do not know about this. And this was the same. They were sending messages when the earthquake had hit us. They were sending messages of sorrow and of well wishes. Again, the Japanese people did not know about this.
僕は41ですが、自分がここまで育ってきた中で一番教育を受けたのは一流の消費者になるための教育を受けたなと思っています。
So I'm age 41, and I think the best education, or I guess the most important or the greatest education I had would be that I become the top consumer, or like the top end consumer.
ですから、この今の現実を直視して、メディアも視聴者や、そして一人一人の読者と、コミュニケーションを密に取りながら一緒になってやはり人権や、環境やそして形にはなかなか見えない、その権利というものについてしっかりと成熟していく必要が今こそあるんだと思います。
So what I believe is important is that we need to look at the reality as is, and for the media and the people, the viewers and the readers to come together to communicate intensively so that we can be in a dialogue to talk about the important issues of human rights, environment, and other rights issues.
なぜなら先ほどセドリックさんが言っていたように、日本は世界各国との経済的な貿易によってこの発展を遂げました。今こそこの経済力を世界の不均衡に役立てる責任があるんだと思います。
And it's what Mr. Cedric has mentioned. Japan has achieved our economic status thanks to the trade that we have had over the years with the global economy. And it is a time for us that we return this and take responsibility and use our economic power to the good of the world.
ですから特に公共の電波を預かる、テレビメディアはその責任というのをしっかりと自覚して社員職員全員がその大きな目標に向かって職務を遂行するべきだと思っています。そういう意識を持っている職員も中にはいるんですが、まだまだ発揮できてないというのが現状で、この数字は正しいんじゃないかと思っています。
So I believe it is the incumbent on the public broadcasting media to really talk about this in a correct manner. And I think all the employees and staff who work in public broadcasting and media have this as something that's important to them as DNA to work towards that. There are staff who do practice this, but unfortunately they aren't able to practice to the full extent. They aren't able to vocalize what they want to do. So I believe this ranking is quite spot on.
以上です。ありがとうございます。
Thank you.
Why don't we get down to more central thing, the press freedom in Japan?
Yes.
I think that's what we've been talking about.
I agree, and I would like to point out two issues that in Japan, I believe, hinders freedom of the press, actually freedom of the press, much more than violence or torture or threats of death. One is the legal issue, and the other one is the lack of solidarity among journalists. Talking about the first one, as you know, in Japan, there is a habit, a custom, that once there is a lawsuit concerning an article and the content of this article. For example, I write something against Mitsubishi, and Mitsubishi sues me or my newspaper. The custom is that you don't write anymore about that. Right? I've been witnessing this on my own. This is nonsense. This is nonsense because actually it blocks the right of pursuing an issue, whether it's wrong or not. By doing that, poor freelancers or not so strong newspapers are de facto prohibited to investigate more on a certain issue. If you write a story and the subject of the story sues you for 20 million yen or 50 million yen, that's much more effective than a phone call or a threat of, I'll send you the Yakuza or whatever. Because actually, you are not anymore free to write about that. So I would like everybody to know this issue. The other issue is lack of solidarity. When I say lack of solidarity, in my first statement, I said it was one of the most sad, probably also disgusting things about exercising our work here is the lack of solidarity between journalists and other journalists. I believe journalists are like lawyers, like missionaries, like doctors. We belong to a certain profession. We do have to share some basic mission, basic ideas. One of these should be the solidarity. Now, in some countries, like our country, Italy, although this is under attack right now by the government, we have the guild of journalists, exactly like you have here for architects, doctors, lawyers, and whatever, and other professionals. But as you know, in Japan, you do not have a guild of journalists. You are journalists as far as you are somehow endorsed by a media. This puts a lot of pressure and weaknesses the integrity of a young journalist. If you are hired by Asahi Shimbun and you are a journalist, you get a card. But by the time that you are fired or dismissed by the Asahi Shimbun or other newspaper, you are Mr. Nobody. You cannot keep working with accreditation because you don't have a press card. You are not a journalist because you are a professional journalist. You are a journalist because you have somebody who hires you. Now, in the world of digital era, I believe this is a very, very big issue, very dangerous, and I hope that everybody takes consciousness about how to go around this. I happened to meet many, many years ago a person whom I respect a lot here in Japan, for a journalist and writer, Mr. Kamata Satoshi. I'm sure he came at the club many times. I don't know actually how he's doing now. But I remember he was a journalist, a freelance journalist who refused always to be hired. And he mastered a lot of scoops in his life. One, I remember writing Toyota on on the passing lane, something like that in English. Well, he posed himself as the Kaseki with a false name, was hired by Toyota. And after 6 months of hard working inside Toyota, he published a book about how Toyota was treating his workers. Now, such a thing today would be almost impossible. You could be sued. You could end up in jail if you do such a thing. Can you imagine how the situation has changed? So let's concentrate on how to defend the right and duty of reporting, regardless whether we belong to a newspaper or to an organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yes.
Okay. プロフェッショナルアソシエイトの茂木です。フリーランスライターです。この今日のテーマに、なってるはずの、ジャパンタイムスが徴用工とそれから慰安婦についての表現を変えたという、これを言ってみれば非難することが書かれて、世界のジャーナリズムがなんか何ですか、ユナニマスリーアンガーみたいなことを言ってますけれど、ちょっとまず2つご質問したいんですけれど、1つはですね、他の国、例えば、イギリスは確かにフランスはちょっと私確認してないんですけど、イギリスは戦時中に国家総動員法的な法律がありまして、そこで徴用というのはあったはずです。そうするとイギリスの徴用はですね、このジャーナリズムでは何と呼んでるんでしょうか。フォーストレーバーと呼んでるんでしょうか。それをまずどなたか知ってる方があったらお答えください。
So I have two questions that let me start. I'm a freelance writer, Ms. Eki. And this going back to the topic of today's press conference about the Japan Times having changed their definition of calling the comfort women or the forced labor in a different definition. And there was a anger, I think the word was used, the anger, from the global media about their change in their position and how they're being closer more to the central government. I have not checked for other countries, but just as the pure question that I have, my first question is, I don't know about France, but particularly in the UK, I know for sure that there wasn't a law that did have this forced labor, a group of forced laborers. It did exist, but what do they call that in the UK? What's the phrase that they actually use in the UK to call these forced labor during the war times? If anybody knows the answer?
Conscripted labor.
Yeah, that sounds right. Conscripted.
Conscripted. Yes. Conscripted labor. 日本の徴用も全く同じはずです。法律に基づいて、当時韓国人はジャパニーズナショナリティだったから徴用が適用されて、これもうんと遅くされたんですけどね、日本人みんな徴用されました。徴兵もされて徴用もされました。それでなんで日本の場合だけね、フォーストレイバーといい、でフォーストレイバーという言い方を今度変えるって言ったら、なんで世界中で起こるんですか。これ日本に対する差別、ナショナルディスクリミネーションじゃないんですか。なんでイギリス薬を使って日本は同じことやってるのはフォーストレイバーじゃなきゃいけない。今度はフォーストレイバーっていう言い方変えるから、これはけしからんっていうのはとんでもない差別じゃないかと私は思うんですけど、ちょっとご意見どなたか言ってください。
So I felt that this was a great discrimination to the Japanese, because if the UK did actually have these forced labor, which were, I guess, called conscripted labor, the Koreans, the Japanese during that time were actually forced to work in a situation. And the Koreans during that time, where they were called forced laborers, they were given the Japanese nationalities. And they were all forced to work in this war area, and they were all forced as laborers. In other words, this was something that was going on in different countries. But why is it that the global media is criticizing us of something that they've all done, And that because that we have changed that word of forced labor to a different word, that we are being pounded upon. Isn't this a discrimination to the Japan?
Okay.
If anybody has a comment?
And let's also talk about the press freedom issue, about how it's covered.
I don't know your name. What is your name? Eh? Okay. Motegi-san. First of all, we have been following this Japan Times issue very closely, even the second editorial. In my opinion, I believe that the very fact that a newspaper, whether it's the Japan Times or the Asahi Shimbun or NHK, decides compulsively impose one or another word to be used by his employees, it's bad. Basically. Yes.
By law.
Yes.
It's by law. So
well, that's not
it is
by law.
applied to all national, Japanese nationals. That's wrong.
Sorry. I'm not talking about law. I'm not talking about law. I'm talking about the fact that
against Japan.
Let me finish, please. Okay? I'm talking about an editor that sends out a notice to his journalists and say, from now on, you cannot use the word forced labor, you must use whatever other word. This is, from the very beginning, an attack to freedom of expression. Much more serious because it's done against journalists. Now, let me finish, because I'm not taking your things for granted. As forced labor, in Italy we use forced labor for prisoners, it doesn't make, let's not be hypocritical about conscripted, forced. In the case of Korea, let me just remind you that the invasion and occupation of Korea was not a legal action by Japan. That's why, I'm sorry, that's history. That's history. That's history, and I'm not taking any revisionism from you.
Yeah, freedom of speech.
Okay,
Yes.
freedom of speech and freedom of knowledge of history. Okay?
Freedom.
So, as far you said they were national Japanese, they didn't ask for that. You imposed them to become national of Japan. So, in that case, it was forced labor.
Okay.
Thank you. Could we hear from our Japanese panelists on this issue first? I'd like to hear from some other speakers on this, and sort of focusing on the issue of press freedom and how we cover these things and how the government can or cannot interfere.
さっき今ピオが指摘したようにですね、政府が言っていることをそのまま伝えるっていうからいつも報道の自由が疑われるわけですね。これ前の NHK 三井美術さんかなんかからの安倍さんが引っ張ってきた人を NHK 会長に無理やりつけた非常に、よく発言するのでよく悪いひどいところが分かりましたけど、その会長が政府の言うことをそのまま伝えるのが NHK の役目だと言って、公然とその報道の自由を否定したんですけどね、これと同じなんですよ、レベルが。で、どのような言葉を使うのは、これそのジャーナリストがですね、この問題はこういうふうな表現を使うべきだっていうものを使った方がいいと思ってるんですよ。やはりどう考えても実態行動ではないかと。それから今の安倍政権の官僚もそうですけど、やっているのは被害者に会わないで、被害者に本当に直接話を聞かないで何でも決めてしまうというところが問題なんですね。ですから慰安婦の問題もそうです。徴用工の問題もそうです。それどれもあれもその被害者の立場になってやるっていうことはなかなかないんですよね。で、今になって前の日韓の厚生条項の時の合意はもう全部終わってるんだってことで、その頃韓国政府でさえもどの日本国の政府代表であってもその個々の戦争の被害者ある植民地時代の被害者の訴えというものを聞いてないんですよね。つまりその人たちの個々の人権がいかに侵害されたかというところに思いが至ってない。そのままの法律の国際法で決まったからもう終わりだと言ってもこれは納得しないんですよね。で、被害を受けた人も納得しない限り本当の解決はないんですよね。それを無視していると、それを政府がこうしたからこうだっていうふうにメディアがそのまま報道することが問題だと私は思っているんですよ。
ちょっと
So wait, wait, sorry,
議論
we
が
need
違う
the
方に行っちゃったん
translation
で、
first. Excuse me.
私2つ質
We
問
need
が
to
ある
hear
って言っ
the
て、もう
English
一つ。
first. We need the English first.
And I think this is something that has happened in NHK as well. The former chairperson of NHK was influenced by Abe-san's appointment, and he has made similar comments as well. And that is, there was some wording that needs to be used by the NHK, and that this is something that is the policy of NHK. But the problem that I want to point out is that it doesn't matter what the wording is. It's about the governments to address what the victims have gone through. It's about meeting them and talking to them and what they have gone through to bring that into light. Those victims' positions were not actually being put on light. And this can be said not just for the Japanese government, but for the Korean government as well. Although they have said that the administrations have been defined and that agreement has been reached under the international law, both governments have failed to talk to these victims and see what they have gone through and have failed to understand what will be a satisfactory ending of that. And because it was the media who did not cover this aspect of the government's failing to really talk to the victims to see what's actually going on, instead of, yes, this international law has been defined and it has been complete, that is what I think is a problem. It is the journalists, it's incumbent of them to report that whole incident.
Thank you. And I know there are more questions. I just want to let Cedric address this quickly. Excuse me, sir. I'm sorry, but we heard your question. I want to allow the speakers to respond. So just one moment, please.
I just would like to bring one little precision. I heard Mr. Moteki mention about freedom of expression. We're not talking about freedom of expression. We're talking about freedom of information. It sounds very similar in English, and I myself often mistake. But freedom of expression cannot be 100%. Cannot be total. Hitler was calling on killing the Jews. Was it his freedom of expression? Hate speech, hate to minorities, is that freedom of expression? There is a limit to freedom of expression, which is the respect of other human beings, which is the respect of other cultures, and it cannot be 100%. Freedom of information should be 100%, is the freedom for journalists, for persons to research verified information and independently broadcast this information to help the citizen to make their own opinion. This is totally different, so we must be extremely careful. Donald Trump uses all the time his freedom of expression to insult journalists. In the Philippines, Mr. Duterte does the same. But then when a journalist is being killed, who is responsible? That's a question we must ask. So we must be very careful that freedom of expression does not equal freedom of information.
Thank you. Okay, we do need to get to other questions. Thank you for yours. It was very interesting. And I would like this man behind you to... I'm sorry, we'll have to... No, I'm sorry, we can't. One question each. Thank you very much, though. That was obviously produced a lot of debate, so thank you.
Ken Joseph, WND. As one who wrote a column for the Japan Times for 12 years, I can tell you that every week was a battle. So that's not something all that new. But there's an interesting thing that I think has happened, and it is essentially a generational change in Japan. The previous two generations previously, they had gone through the war, and they had suffered the inability to write freely. So they passed it on to the next generation. This is the third generation. And for some reason, they've lost the ability to consider being a journalist as something you fight for. For example, I was in Samoa. All the Japanese journalists there, without even being asked to, agreed to censorship. And I stood up in the meeting and I said, well, this is a foreign country. How can you afford censorship? Not one of the journalists from all of the media had understood that they were in a foreign country and they couldn't be forced to censor. I was in Iraq before the war, during Saddam, after the war. And each time, what profoundly hit me was a lack of courage among journalists that look at it now as more of a job than a profession that you fight for. And finally, what's significant about here is if you look through the history, the only history of a generally free press has been the English language media. If you look historically, the Japan Times was started by Americans, the Japan Advertiser, the Japan News was started by Americans. There was 6 English language papers that essentially guaranteed the freedom of the press. And finally, just one small issue. It's kind of the canary in the mine, but there's a group of people that I'm part of them, putting out just a simple badge of people that want to protect the Constitution. And so far, it was started by Rukusuke, but 220 journalists, and other than Tokyo Shimbun, nobody can write about people supporting the Constitution anymore. It's a very interesting. Initially, they say yes, then it goes back to the desk, and it's always canceled. So the canary in the mine is whether you're free to write about the Constitution or not. And finally, as you saw today, when you speak too much, racism is brought up, and that causes the objective press to pull back. So that's a huge problem when you try to stick up for freedom of the press. Anyway, thank you for the rating, because it's done significant to bring the issue to the fore.
Thank you. Ida-san, would you like to speak? Yeah. Yes.
先ほどの要するに、日本の記者たちが戦わないっていうのは、おっしゃる通りで、一つは教育の問題があると思います。大学の受験の問題。
So one of the comments that was made earlier about the Japanese readers also being responsible for this, I think it comes down to education as well, particularly the entrance exam for universities.
日本の受験システムは長い間、教科書を暗記して、それをそのままペーパーに落とすと。で書いた通りをそのまま覚えて、そのまま、回答用紙に書くと、そういうで高得点を取る人が優遇されてきました。でそういういわゆる、いい大学に行った人をメディア、大メディアは採用します。
So this Juken system we call the entrance exam system is all about taking a textbook, memorizing everything, and just rewriting that on the paper on the day. And if you're able to write it correctly, you get the high score, you get into the top schools. And these top school graduates are the ones who get hired by the major media.
それは霞が関の官僚も同じなんですが、要は自分の頭でしっかり考える、何のために自分が仕事をしているんだ、それはもちろん日本の場合は日本のそういうメディアの読者、視聴者、それに正しい情報を与える、そのために一生懸命働くと、そういうことが欠落しているんだと思います。
And I think that can be said for the central government as well, how they hire these graduates. And it's all about this lack of the importance of you have to think for yourself. Why am I doing this? Why do I need to learn this? Why do I want to talk about this? And for the journalists, they need to understand what they have to do, which is about providing the correct information to the readers.
ただですね、大学の受験システムが、間もなくちょっと正確には覚えてないんですけれども、かなり筆記重視にするという方向に、変わると。でこのことによって、いわゆる、自分の頭で考えるという教育がですね、少し広がれば希望はあるのかなというか、そこに希望を持ちたいとも思っております。ありがとうございます。
But I forgot what timing, but I believe the Juken system is on the verge of change. In other words, it's not just about regurgitating what you have saw and read, but it's about thinking for yourself and writing your comments, what you thought about that. Such sort of thinking is something that's promoted, and we hope that that will be a change that could bring about in the journalism as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are supposed to wrap up soon. If people need to go, please feel free. It's 1:30. I'd like to just, it's a really good discussion. It would be great to take at least one more question before we finish. So if anyone has one, but can I see if there's, sorry, just because you already had one, if there's anyone who hasn't asked a question yet or made a comment.
There was a fellow in the far corner over there who raised his hand.
Albert, would you like to have?
Well, you are
We
not
love hearing
obliged.
from Yeah,
We are not threatening you.
I kind of gave up raising my hand. It took a while.
I know, you were really far away.
So my name's Albert Siegel. I'm freelance. And I guess my question is specifically for the Reporters Without Borders about this ranking. You say that at the end of the day, and I just want to make sure I understand correctly your point, is that you say that your rankings are really, you do gather facts, but it's really based more on feeling and opinion as to how you can change a situation as you perceive it to be problematic. Is that, is my understanding correct? It's, I mean, you know, how does this differ, for example, from Freedom House, which actually ranks Japan quite highly in terms of freedom of the press? where their system's quite different than yours. Obviously, they don't do it based on activism, as you said. So I don't know if maybe I misunderstood. I just want clarification. That's all.
Thank you. No, you're right. You're right. Actually, we have different criteria. We have a different purpose to do it. I understand that Freedom House is somehow assessing the global the global status of the regulation. They might work more on assessing how things are being in the text, how things are being written. I must say that we focus more on the feedback we have from journalists and from people who live in the countries which we cover. And as a matter of fact, RSF has currently 14 bureaus around the world. We have more than 150 correspondents. So I must say that we receive precise information, but what we assess is the actual reality, we believe the actual reality on the field, how journalists can be or not be a counterpower. We do not promote and defend press freedom for the sake of press freedom. We defend press freedom because it's an essential tool for democracy, for the rule of law, for the respect of human rights. So we really want to go deep into how does it work in that country. Obviously, and I'm very glad that there was this panel of local specialists who know the situation much better than I do, because you heard a lot of arguments on what are the problems that might not be read. If you read the Constitution, yes, there is freedom of the press. If you read the regulation, there's probably some ways that protect or guarantee that freedom. But if you see how it happens when the medias are published, it seems that there are serious problems. And maybe I would like to end that we are in a world where the freedom of the press globally is at stake. Especially China and Russia are very actively trying to promote another concept of journalism outside their borders now in all countries in the world that would have nothing of a counterpower, that would be basically the mouthpiece of the state and the government policies. We do not want this to happen. The problem is that democracies are weak. They are weak because they are open, they give space for everybody to talk, including some propaganda media, including some elements that are obviously against democracy. This is a big problem. There's a growing number of countries that have what we call illiberal democracies. Like in Russia, there's elections, but basically the media only talk positively of one person. We have in Europe, Hungary, Poland, that are currently reversing the freedom of the press that the people had. So the problem is that in the end, the citizens of these countries are losing any way to impact on what's happening. They do not know what their government is doing. So in the future, their vote will just have no relevance. Same in Turkey, same in more places. So this is a global concern, and this is why, and I will finish with that, we expect Japan to become a better model, because Japan is a very important country in the world. There's a lot that could be done. There are, of course, internal cultural problems that might take generations to solve. There are some problems that touch the other countries that basically are the democracy's problems, like the influence of business and politics. And there are some problems that we believe the current authorities could be solving if they were working on, but obviously they do not recognize that there is a problem. When you don't recognize the problem, you can't work on solving it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, okay. Just very briefly, because we are running out of time. Thank you.
今日の本来のテーマの日本の報道の自由で、じゃあこれをどうして改善していくかということでちょっとパネリストからもすでに出ましたけど、戦うっていうことですよね。でも別に昔のような覚悟を持って戦うんではなくて、最低でも疑問を呈すると。でこの間菅官房長官にね、東京新聞の望月さんが22回か3回質問したということで、要するに分からない限りきちんとその疑問が思うものをきちんと質問していくと、それだけでも随分変わると思います。それで私がいろんな人と個人的に会いますけど、多い優秀なジャーナリストがたくさんおります、いろんなメディアに。その人たちにも少しそういうことをやってもらいたいなと思っています。
So just the comment about how to improve the Japanese media in terms of freedom of press, I think it comes down to fighting. And it's not about fighting with sticks and stones. It's about questioning and doubting. And if you don't know what's going on, ask the questions. Like Mochizuki-san from Tokyo Shimbun has asked Suga-san earlier, it's about if you don't know the facts, really question. And there are talented journalists who are not doing this, unfortunately, and we want them to stand up and question and doubt and put that difficult questions in front.
先ほどピオさんからですね、名誉毀損裁判、訴訟の話が出ました。ここは一つですね、日本の損保会社に頑張っていただきたいと思っています。
So, Pio-san has mentioned about some defamation cases, and I believe the insurance companies in Japan can do a better job.
そういう雑誌とかフリーの人が加盟して、名誉毀損訴訟、大体スラップが多いんですけれども、それが起こされたときにちゃんと保証している、そういう保険ができるといいなと思っています。
So we hope that the insurance companies will come up with a program where the freelancers and all the journalists can be protected, and I believe that's a part that hopefully they can play a part.
というのがですね、日本はそもそも損害賠償がかなり抑えられてきました。というのがですね、訴える方はこれは嘘だというだけでいいんですね。で、それは嘘じゃない、これは事実なんだというのが書いた方に説明責任があるわけです、今も。で、これは取材源の取得を含めて極めてハードルが高い。ですので、今までそういう裁判の損害賠償費用が低かったんです。
And unfortunately, in Japan, the law states that if you actually start a lawsuit, and if the other party say that it's a lie, it's incumbent on the person who makes the lawsuit to say that this is a fact. It is upon them to establish the facts. And unfortunately, that has been restricted in some of the cases of defamation to date.
今もう億単位の訴訟が普通になってきまして、1000万を超える損害賠償が認められるケースも出てきました。こうなるとですね、やはりそれはですね、嘘であるというだけで勝ってしまうんじゃなくて、嘘である証明を訴えた方がする必要が出てくるんじゃないでしょうか。
But there has been recently increasing cases where there has been cases in 100 millions, and there are cases that have been signed for the tens of millions as well. So we believe that it's important for the law to actually come in to play a part to say it is also the responsibility of the to establish that it is a lie, instead of the person who is actually suing to say that it is not a lie. So it is it's incumbent on both parties to establish that it's a lie or it is not a lie.
またですね、アメリカで結構普及しているようにスラップ防止法、これは嫌がらせ訴訟であると認めたらその時点で訴えを退けると、そういう法的な仕組みも必要になってくると思います。ありがとうございます。
And I believe it is also important that, like it's done in the United States, the slap prevention law, if it's something that's being defamation for the sake of being a harassment, then that should be there and then, and we should have a law as such as well in Japan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think that's a great place to close. I really appreciate all of our speakers being here today. Let's give them a round of applause for being here. Thank you. And a special thanks to Pio for helping to organize all of this. And we would like to, Pio's already a member, but the rest of you offer a one-year honorary membership to the club. So we would love to see you back. Thank you again for coming today.
ありがとうございます。